My name is Clara, a 32-year-old woman who never imagined calling the police on her own family. After years of hard work, I finally bought my dream home. What was supposed to be a joyous housewarming and birthday celebration quickly turned into a nightmare when my parents demanded I give my house to my younger sister, Daisy. The shock still hasn't worn off. How does a birthday gathering turn into your father screaming, "Give us the keys and get out," while blocking the exits? I still remember the officer's face when he realized what was happening. This experience taught me about standing my ground when my own parents tried to steal my home. Growing up in suburban Boston, I always felt a subtle divide in how my parents treated me compared to my younger sister, Daisy. It wasn't anything I could pinpoint precisely at first, just small differences that added up over time. Daisy received newer clothes, more elaborate birthday parties, and endless second chances when she made mistakes. Meanwhile, I learned early that I needed to be self-sufficient. My academic achievements were met with nods and quick changes of subject, while Daisy's C- was celebrated with ice cream because at least she tried her best. I threw myself into schoolwork, earning scholarships that covered most of my college tuition at Boston University. My parents never offered to help with expenses, telling me that my scholarships meant I had it covered. Yet, they paid for Daisy's entire education at a private liberal arts college, including an off-campus apartment, so she wouldn't have to deal with stressful dorm life. I worked 30 hours a week at a campus coffee shop while maintaining my GPA, learning to function on 5 hours of sleep and leftover pastries. After graduation, I started as an entry-level financial analyst at a respected firm in the city. The hours were brutal, but I was determined to build something for myself. While my colleagues complained about their student loans, I felt a quiet pride in having graduated debt-free through sheer persistence. For 5 years, I lived in a tiny studio apartment with thrift store furniture, working my main job, plus weekend gigs doing tax preparation during tax season and bookkeeping for small businesses. Every dollar that didn't go to rent or basic necessities went straight into my house fund. My parents called my determination to buy a home obsessive and suggested I should live a little. Meanwhile, Daisy jumped from job to job, accumulating credit card debt and calling our parents whenever she couldn't make rent. They always came through for her, explaining that Daisy just hadn't found her path yet. When Daisy met Mark during a vacation our parents paid for, they were thrilled that she had found someone stable. Mark worked in sales, and while he seemed decent enough, he enabled Daisy's spending habits rather than helping her develop financial responsibility. They married quickly and within 3 years had 3 children. My parents transformed into doting grandparents, watching the kids whenever asked and showering them with gifts. Daisy and Mark rented a 3-bedroom apartment, living beyond their means until they were eventually evicted for repeatedly late payments. They moved to a smaller 2-bedroom place with my parents subsidizing their rent. Throughout all this, the pressure on me to help out my sister intensified. "You're doing so well, Clara. Family helps family," my mother would say, conveniently forgetting that this helping only ever flowed in one direction. There was the time Daisy borrowed my car for just the weekend and returned it 2 weeks later with a dented fender and an empty tank. Or when my parents assumed I would cover Daisy's portion of a family vacation since I got that bonus at work. Or the countless times Daisy would show up at my apartment unannounced, kids in tow, expecting free babysitting because you're not doing anything important anyway. Despite all this, I still craved my family's approval. So, when I finally closed on my house, a charming 3-bedroom craftsman style in a good neighborhood that I had saved years for, I invited everyone over for a combination housewarming and my birthday celebration. I spent days cleaning every corner, preparing guest rooms, and cooking family favorites. I thought maybe, just maybe, they would finally see me, really see me, and what I had accomplished on my own. The pride I felt unlocking my front door each evening was indescribable. I had done what no one else in my immediate family had ever done, purchased a home without help, based entirely on my own hard work and discipline. This house represented everything I had sacrificed for. Every extra shift, every skipped vacation, every night eating ramen to save a few more dollars. It was more than wood and brick. It was tangible proof that I was capable and independent. As I arranged fresh flowers on the dining table before everyone's arrival, I allowed myself to hope that this day might finally earn me the respect I'd been seeking for decades. The morning of the gathering, I woke up early to put finishing touches on my home. The spring sunlight filtered through the original stained glass accents in my living room windows, casting colorful patterns across the hardwood floors I had painstakingly refinished myself. My house wasn't huge, but its charm had captured my heart instantly. The spacious kitchen with its updated appliances opened to a cozy dining area where I had placed my grandmother's restored table. The home office I had set up in the smallest bedroom was my sanctuary for remote workdays, while the master bedroom featured a reading nook by the window, where I often lost myself in books until late at night. The third bedroom functioned as a guest room, though I had dreams of eventually converting part of it into a crafting space. The backyard wasn't large, but I had already started a small vegetable garden and installed a bench under the maple tree. This place was undeniably mine in a way nothing else had ever been. My parents arrived first, exactly on time as always. "The neighborhood seems a bit congested," my father commented as I greeted them at the door with hugs. "You know how these older areas can go downhill quickly," my mother added, handing me a small gift bag that I would later find contained a generic scented candle from the discount store. I gave them a tour, trying to highlight the original woodwork and updated features that had made me fall in love with the property. My father inspected everything with a critical eye, pointing out minor flaws and areas that would need work soon. Mom ran her finger along surfaces, checking for dust, and rearranged the decorative pillows on my couch without asking. "It's certainly cozy," she said in that tone that clearly meant small. I maintained my smile, having anticipated their lukewarm reaction. My cousin Nancy arrived next, bringing warmth and genuine enthusiasm that helped ease the tension. "Clara, this place is absolutely gorgeous. I can't believe you did all this yourself," she exclaimed, admiring the built-in bookshelves and character of the home. Her sincere appreciation was like a balm after my parents' subtle criticisms. Aunt Beatrice, my father's sister and the family truth-teller, arrived bearing a houseplant and a warm hug. "You've done wonderfully for yourself," she whispered in my ear. "Don't let anyone make you feel otherwise." She pulled back, holding my gaze meaningfully. "I've heard some concerning conversations lately, but we can talk about that another time. Today is for celebrating." Before I could ask what she meant, the doorbell rang again. I spent the next hour in the kitchen preparing the special lasagna recipe passed down from my Italian grandmother, along with fresh salad and garlic bread. The familiar process of cooking helped calm my nerves, even as I heard my parents giving their own unauthorized tour to some newly arrived relatives, highlighting features of my home as if they had selected them themselves. Just as I was putting the lasagna in the oven, the front door burst open without a knock. "Hello, where is everyone?" Daisy's voice carried through the house, followed immediately by the sound of running feet and squealing children. "Kids, don't run in Auntie Clara's house," she called half-heartedly, making no actual attempt to stop them. I wiped my hands and went to greet them, plastering on a smile. Daisy stood in my entryway, looking around with an appraising eye, a designer purse hanging from her arm despite her financial struggles. Mark hung back, nodding awkwardly at me while shooting glances around the foyer and living room. "So, this is what financial analysts can afford these days," Daisy said with a laugh that didn't reach her eyes. "Must be nice having all this space just for yourself." She gestured vaguely toward the staircase, where I could hear her children thundering up and down despite my earlier child-proofing efforts. "The kids are just exploring," she added, seeing my expression. "They need room to run around. Our apartment is so cramped these days." My parents appeared, faces lighting up at the sight of their grandchildren. "There are little angels," Mom cooed, completely ignoring the fact that the youngest was currently using a crayon on my wallpaper. "Let them explore everywhere," Dad encouraged. "Auntie Clara has so many interesting things in her big house." Throughout the afternoon, I noticed Mark wandering through different rooms, opening closets, and even checking out the storage spaces. At one point, I passed the guest bathroom and overheard him on his phone. "Yeah, it's perfect. 3 bedrooms, finished basement, good neighborhood for the schools. The commute would actually be shorter for me." He quickly ended the call when he realized I was nearby. During dinner preparations, I asked Daisy to keep her children out of my home office where I had important work documents, only to have her roll her eyes. "They're just playing, Clara. Don't be so uptight. It's not like you have actual kids to worry about." This comment was met with knowing looks between my parents, making me feel increasingly uneasy. At the dinner table, the conversation repeatedly circled back to how I, as a single woman, really didn't need all this space, while Daisy's family was crammed into that tiny apartment. Each time, my achievements were minimized. When I mentioned my recent project at work that had earned praise from the CEO, my mother quickly redirected. "That's nice, dear. But Daisy has been doing amazing work with the PDA bake sale. 3 children, and she still makes time to volunteer." I caught Aunt Beatrice's pointed look as she tried to steer the conversation elsewhere. "Clara, tell us about your plans for the garden. I noticed you've already started some vegetables." I was grateful for the lifeline, but couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Throughout the meal, I noticed family members exchanging glances, Daisy and my parents having whispered conversations that abruptly stopped when I approached, and Mark continuing to examine my house as if he were a prospective buyer rather than a guest. The knot in my stomach tightened, but I dismissed it as my usual family tension. After all, what could they possibly be planning in my own home? After dinner, I invited everyone to the living room for birthday cake. I had splurged on a beautiful chocolate cake from my favorite bakery, decorated with fresh berries, and "Happy Birthday, Clara" written in elegant script. As I prepared to cut it, my father cleared his throat loudly. "Before we get to the cake, we have something important to discuss as a family," he announced, his authoritative tone immediately silencing the room. My mother nodded, moving to stand beside him in a show of unity that I had seen countless times before, usually before delivering some verdict or decision that was presented as final and non-negotiable. "We've been discussing Clara's situation," my father continued, his eyes not quite meeting mine. The phrase "Clara's situation" hung in the air like a bad odor. "What situation?" I had a good job, no debt, and had just achieved the milestone of homeownership. Before I could ask for clarification, my mother jumped in, her voice taking on that saccharine tone she used when trying to mask something unpleasant as a favor. "We think we've come up with a family solution that will help everyone," she said, smiling in a way that didn't reach her eyes. "A way to make sure family resources are distributed in the most beneficial way." I felt my stomach drop as my father finally looked directly at me. "Clara, we think you should give your house to Daisy and her family." The room went silent. I stared at him, certain I had misheard. "What?" I managed to say, my voice sounding distant to my own ears. "It makes perfect sense," my mother continued smoothly, as if we were discussing something as trivial as a dinner plan change. "You're single. You don't need all this space. Daisy has 3 children crammed into that tiny apartment. This house has a yard for the kids to play in, good schools nearby, and enough bedrooms for everyone." Daisy nodded enthusiastically, apparently not seeing anything wrong with this outrageous suggestion. "We've already discussed how we'd arrange the rooms," she said, her eyes gleaming with excitement. "The kids would each get their own space, and Mark could use that little office you set up for his work." Mark, looking slightly uncomfortable, but not disagreeing, added, "I've already researched the schools in this district. They're much better than where we are now." My father, apparently interpreting my shocked silence as consideration, pressed on with what was clearly a rehearsed pitch. "You can easily find a nice 1-bedroom apartment, something more suitable for your lifestyle. You might even have money left over after the transfer." My head was spinning. They wanted me to just hand over my house, the home I had sacrificed for years to afford. "And where exactly would I live during this transition?" I asked, fighting to keep my voice steady. "You can stay with us until you find a new place," my mother offered magnanimously. "We still have your old bedroom." "The timeline we were thinking," my father continued, as if this were a done deal, "would be for you to move out within the month. That gives you plenty of time to pack your personal items and arrange for the property transfer." "Property transfer," I repeated, the words feeling foreign on my tongue. "You want me to just sign over my house? The house that I saved for years to buy? The house that I alone pay the mortgage on?" Family helps family, my mother said firmly, the familiar refrain that only ever seemed to apply when I was expected to give something up. Have you all lost your minds? Aunt Beatrice's voice cut through the tension like a knife. She had been sitting quietly in the corner, but now stood, her face flushed with anger. You cannot be serious about this. My father shot her an irritated look. Beatrice, this is a family matter. Yes, and I'm family, she shot back. Family who can recognize insanity when I see it. I took a deep breath, trying to organize my thoughts. Let me make sure I understand, I said slowly. You want me to give away my house, which I worked multiple jobs for years to afford, to Daisy and Mark, who have never demonstrated any financial responsibility whatsoever. Then I should move back in with you and start over from scratch on finding housing for myself. Is that correct? My mother's expression hardened. When you put it that way, you make it sound unreasonable. Because it is unreasonable, I exclaimed, my composure finally breaking. This is my house. I earned it. I saved for it. I am not giving it away. Daisy's face crumpled into the tearful expression I'd seen manipulate our parents countless times. But the children need stability, she whimpered. They need a yard and their own rooms. Don't you care about your nieces and nephew at all? Of course I care about them, I responded, fighting to stay calm. But caring about them doesn't mean giving them my house. There are plenty of 3-bedroom homes for rent or sale in perfectly good neighborhoods that you and Mark could work toward, just like I did. My father's face was turning the dangerous shade of red that had always preceded his worst temper outbursts during our childhood. After all we've done for you, he said in a low, threatening tone, this is how you repay us. By denying your sister a proper home for her children. What exactly have you done for me? I asked, the question that had been building for decades finally escaping. I worked my way through college. I saved for this house entirely on my own. I have never asked you for anything. We raised you. My mother jumped in, listing off basic parental responsibilities as if they were extraordinary sacrifices. We fed you, clothed you, drove you to those endless academic competitions that you insisted on participating in. Daisy was now fully crying, Mark awkwardly patting her shoulder while avoiding eye contact with everyone. You've always been selfish, she sobbed. Always thinking about yourself first. The accusation stung despite its absurdity. Throughout the room, I could see family members shifting uncomfortably, some avoiding my gaze, while others watched the unfolding drama with undisguised interest. Only Aunt Beatrice and Nancy looked openly supportive of me, while everyone else seemed to be waiting to see if I would cave to the pressure as I always had before. I'm not giving you my house, I stated firmly, looking directly at my sister. I'm sorry about your housing situation, but this isn't the solution. My father stood up then, using his height to try to intimidate me as he had throughout my childhood. Either you agree to sign over this house, he said, pointing his finger inches from my face, or you're no longer part of this family. Are you seriously threatening to disown me because I won't give away my house? I asked, struggling to process the sheer audacity of the demand. My father's face contorted with rage, a familiar sight from my childhood that still made my stomach clench. This isn't about the house anymore, he spat. This is about your character. Your sister has given us 3 beautiful grandchildren. What have you contributed to this family besides criticism and judgment? Every achievement I'd ever accomplished seemed to evaporate in the heat of his dismissal. I worked 3 jobs to put myself through college, I said, my voice shaking. I saved for years while living in an apartment the size of your master bathroom to afford this house. How is that not worthy of respect? My mother stepped forward, her expression a practiced blend of disappointment and martyrdom. Oh, Clara, always so dramatic about your so-called sacrifices. You got that promotion 2 years ago purely by luck. Your boss felt sorry for you. Daisy has made real sacrifices raising 3 children while volunteering at their school. I felt like I was drowning in the familiar sea of gaslighting and diminishment. From the corner of my eye, I could see Aunt Beatrice trying to interject, but my father spoke over her. Remember when you were 10 and wouldn't let Daisy play with your science kit? Or when you were 16 and complained about driving her to dance practice? You've always been selfish. These cherry-picked incidents from decades ago, presented without context, were apparently evidence of my lifelong moral failure. Meanwhile, Daisy's children had started crying, picking up on the tension in the room. Daisy immediately gathered them to her, throwing me an accusatory look as if their tears were my fault. "See what you're doing? You're upsetting the children," she exclaimed loudly. They were so excited about having their own rooms in this house. I took a deep breath, fighting to maintain my composure. "I understand you're disappointed, but this is my home. I'm not giving it to you." I looked around the room at my assembled family, searching for understanding in any of their faces. Most looked away uncomfortably. "I've spent my entire life trying to earn your approval. I've worked harder, complained less, and asked for nothing in return, but this is too much." My father's voice dropped to a dangerous growl. "Give us the keys and get out. This should be Daisy's house." I blinked in confusion. "Get out of my own house?" "It's not your house anymore," he shouted, stepping closer until he was looming over me, his finger jabbing toward my face. "Not if you want to remain part of this family." The room was spinning around me. I needed air, space to think away from the suffocating pressure of their expectations and demands. "I need some air," I said, turning toward the front door. To my shock, Daisy immediately moved to block the doorway, her arms crossed over her chest. "You're not leaving until this is settled," she said, her earlier tears mysteriously dried. Behind me, I heard movement and turned to see Mark and my father positioning themselves near the other exits. A chill ran down my spine as I realized with growing horror that my family was actually attempting to physically prevent me from leaving my own home. This wasn't just an outrageous demand anymore. I was being trapped. I looked into my sister's eyes, searching for any sign of the girl I had once shared secrets with under blanket forts, but saw only entitlement and determination. My father's face showed nothing but righteous anger, as if his behavior was completely justified. My mother stood with her arms crossed, nodding in approval at their actions. This wasn't a negotiation or even an argument anymore. It was a hostage situation in my own home. I backed away from Daisy and moved toward the kitchen, hoping to reach the back door, but my father quickly followed. "Where do you think you're going?" he demanded, his large frame filling the doorway. "You're not walking away from this discussion." My heart was pounding as I realized they were actually coordinating to keep me confined. "This isn't a discussion," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "This is insanity. You can't keep me prisoner in my own house." Aunt Beatrice pushed past my mother to stand beside me. "This has gone far enough," she said firmly. "You cannot physically prevent Clara from moving freely in her own home. That's illegal." My mother turned to her with a cold stare. "Beatrice, stay out of family business. This doesn't concern you." "It became my concern when you started acting like criminals," Aunt Beatrice shot back. I used their distraction to move further into the kitchen, putting the island between myself and my father. With shaking hands, I pulled my cell phone from my pocket and called Lena, my best friend since college. She answered on the second ring. "Hey, birthday girl. How's the party?" Her cheerful voice was a stark contrast to the nightmare unfolding around me. "Lena," I said quietly, turning away from my family's glares. "Something really bad is happening. My parents and Daisy are demanding I give them my house. And now they're blocking the doors, so I can't leave." "What?" Lena's voice sharpened with concern. "Are you serious, Clara? That's illegal. They can't hold you against your will. You need to call the police." I lowered my voice further. "They're my family, Lena. I can't call the cops on them. If they're preventing you from leaving, they're not acting like family," Lena insisted. "They're acting like criminals." Before I could respond, my father lunged forward and grabbed the phone from my hand. "Who are you talking to?" he demanded, looking at the screen where Lena was still connected. "Clara." I could hear her voice calling out from the speaker. "I can hear you. What's going on over there?" My father ended the call with a jab of his finger. "No outsiders in family business," he growled. Aunt Beatrice reached for the phone. "Give that back to her right now, Harold." When she tried to take it from his hand, he pushed her aside roughly, causing her to stumble against the counter. My 70-year-old aunt winced in pain, grabbing her hip. That was the moment something broke inside me. Seeing him manhandle an elderly woman, my beloved aunt who had always been kind to me, was the final line crossed. I rushed to Aunt Beatrice's side, helping her steady herself. "Are you okay?" I asked, glaring at my father. "I'm fine," she assured me, though her face was pale. "But this has gone far enough." I nodded, a cold clarity replacing my earlier confusion and hurt. I looked at my father, still holding my phone, and made my decision. "I'll be in my office," I said calmly, helping Aunt Beatrice to a kitchen chair before walking toward the hallway. I could hear footsteps following me, my mother's voice calling out demands, but I didn't look back. I reached my home office and slipped inside, quickly locking the door behind me. Immediately, there was pounding from the other side. "Clara, open this door right now," my father shouted. I dragged my heavy desk chair to the door, wedging it under the handle for additional security. The landline on my desk, which I'd kept mainly for work calls, now seemed like a lifeline. With trembling fingers, I dialed 911. "911, what's your emergency?" The dispatcher's calm voice was reassuring in the chaos. "My name is Clara Davies," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I'm at 1437 Maple Street. My family is trying to force me to give them my house, and when I refused, they're now preventing me from leaving. They've taken my cell phone and are currently trying to break into the room I've locked myself in." There was a brief pause before the dispatcher responded. "Are you in immediate danger? Do any of them have weapons?" "No weapons that I know of," I answered, flinching as something heavy thudded against the door. "But they're trying to force their way in. And my elderly aunt was already pushed when she tried to help me." "I'm dispatching officers to your location now," the dispatcher assured me. "Please stay on the line until they arrive." Through the door, I could hear my parents' threats growing more desperate. "If you call the police, you'll regret it forever," my mother shouted. "Is this how you want to destroy this family, by involving strangers in private matters?" The absurdity of her perspective would have been laughable if the situation weren't so frightening. They were trying to steal my house and physically restrain me, yet I was the one destroying the family by seeking help. I could hear Daisy's voice through the door, instructing her children in a stage whisper, "Remember to look really sad when the police come, okay? Tell them how much you wanted to live in Auntie Clara's house." Mark's voice came next, sounding considerably more concerned than before. "Maybe we should just leave before the police get here. This has gotten out of hand." "We're not going anywhere," my father insisted. "When the police arrive, we'll explain our reasonable request. They'll understand that this is just a family disagreement." I sat at my desk, phone clutched to my ear, listening to the dispatcher's reassurances while my family continued their siege. The situation felt surreal, as if I had stepped into someone else's nightmare. These people who were supposed to love me unconditionally were now trying to bully and intimidate me into homelessness for their own benefit, and they genuinely seemed to believe they were justified. The minutes crawled by, feeling like hours, as I waited for help to arrive. The pounding on the door had subsided somewhat, replaced by urgent whispers in the hallway that I couldn't quite make out. I wonder what story they were concocting to tell the police, what spin they would put on their outrageous demand and subsequent actions. Through it all, the dispatcher remained on the line, a calm voice in the storm, checking in regularly to make sure I was still safe. When I finally heard the authoritative knock at the front door and calls of "Police Department, open up," the relief was so intense I nearly collapsed. "Police are here," I told the dispatcher, my voice cracking with emotion. "Thank you for staying with me." "You're welcome, ma'am. The officers will take it from here. Please stay safe." I hung up the phone, listening carefully to the sounds from the front of the house. The hammering on my office door had stopped completely. Taking a deep breath, I removed the chair from under the doorknob and unlocked the door. The hallway was empty, my family having apparently retreated to the living room to meet the police. I walked shakily toward the front of the house where two uniformed officers stood in my entryway. One was a tall woman with a serious expression, while the other was a middle-aged man with kind eyes. "I'm Clara Davies," I said, approaching them. "I'm the one who called." The female officer nodded. "I'm Officer Miller, and this is Officer Thompson. Are you okay, ma'am?" Before I could answer, my father stepped forward, his earlier rage replaced by a concerned expression I recognized from countless childhood incidents when he needed to make a good impression. "Officers, I'm Harold Davies, Clara's father. I'm afraid there's been a misunderstanding. Our daughter is going through some personal issues right now, and she's not thinking clearly." The practiced smoothness of his lie made my stomach turn. Officer Miller turned to me. "Miss Davies, would you mind if we spoke privately for a moment?" I nodded gratefully, leading her into the kitchen while Officer Thompson remained with my family. "Can you tell me exactly what happened here today?" Officer Miller asked once we were alone. I took a deep breath and explained everything, from the initial demand that I give my house to my sister, to their blocking the exits when I tried to leave, to my father grabbing my phone and pushing Aunt Beatrice. Officer Miller took detailed notes. "This is your property, correct? You're the legal owner." "Yes," I confirmed, retrieving the deed and mortgage documents from a file in my kitchen drawer. "I purchased it 8 months ago. I'm the only one on all the paperwork." She examined the documents and nodded. "And do you want these people to leave your property now?" "Yes," I said firmly, surprising myself with how certain I felt. "I want them all to leave immediately." Officer Miller nodded. "We'll make that happen. Is there anyone here you want to stay?" "Anyone who wasn't involved in this situation." I thought for a moment. "My Aunt Beatrice tried to help me. She can stay if she wants to. And my cousin Nancy wasn't involved either." The officer made a note, then asked, "Would you like to press charges for the unlawful restraint and the assault on your aunt?" The question gave me pause. Despite everything, they were still my family. "Not right now," I decided. "I just want them gone." She nodded understanding. "That's your right. You can always file a report later if you change your mind." We returned to the living room where Officer Thompson had apparently been listening to my family's version of events. My mother was dabbing at non-existent tears while Daisy had her children clustered around her, their faces solemn as instructed. My father stood with his arms crossed, projecting authority even in this situation. Officer Miller addressed the room. "I've spoken with Ms. Davies and verified that she is the legal owner of this property. She has asked for all of you, with the exception of Beatrice Davies and Nancy Clark, to leave immediately." My father's face darkened. "This is ridiculous. We're her parents. That doesn't give you the right to prevent her from leaving her own home or to take her property," Officer Miller stated firmly. "Miss Davies has the legal right to ask anyone to leave her property, family or not." "But we were just talking about family matters," my mother protested, her voice rising in pitch. "Daisy needs this house for her children." "Ma'am, whether someone needs a house doesn't give them the right to take it," Officer Thompson said calmly. "Now you can leave voluntarily, or we can escort you out. Your choice." My father looked at me, his expression a mixture of rage and disbelief. "This isn't over," he said in a low voice. "Family takes care of family. You've shown your true colors today." My mother's face crumpled in what I recognized as her practiced disappointment expression. "I can't believe you'd do this to your own blood," she said tearfully. "After everything we've done for you." I said nothing, standing my ground as Officer Miller positioned herself slightly between us. Daisy gathered her children and diaper bag, shooting me a venomous look. "Come on, kids. Apparently, Auntie Clara doesn't want us in her big house. We'll go back to our tiny apartment." "Ma'am," Officer Thompson said firmly to Daisy, "please don't make this more difficult than it needs to be." Mark, looking deeply uncomfortable, placed his hand on Daisy's back and guided her toward the door. "Let's just go," he muttered. "This has gone too far." One by one, they filed out. Some family members looking ashamed, others angry, a few simply confused by the dramatic turn of events. The officers remained until every unwanted person had left the property and driven away. Officer Miller handed me her card with a case number written on the back. "If any of them return and refuse to leave, or if you feel threatened in any way, call us immediately. You might want to consider a restraining order, especially given the threats that were made." I thanked them both profusely, standing in the doorway as they returned to their patrol car. Only when they had driven away did I close and lock the door, then slide down against it to sit on the floor, my legs no longer able to support me. Aunt Beatrice sat beside me, her warm hand covering mine. You did the right thing, she said quietly. I know it doesn't feel like it right now, but you did. The tears I had been holding back finally broke free, and I sobbed into my hands, the full weight of what had happened crashing down on me. My own family had tried to take my home, had physically prevented me from leaving, had shown a breathtaking level of entitlement and disregard for my autonomy. And now, despite being the victim, I felt the crushing guilt they had spent decades instilling in me. The days following the incident were a blur of emotions and practical concerns. My phone buzzed constantly with texts and calls from family members, some expressing shock at my parents' behavior, others trying to convince me to be reasonable and reconsider giving my house to Daisy. Several relatives I had always considered close suddenly revealed their true feelings, suggesting that as a single woman, I didn't need a 3-bedroom house as much as my sister's family. Daisy posted vague but pointed comments on social media about selfish sisters and how hard it was to raise children in inadequate housing, garnering sympathy from people who didn't know the whole story. To my surprise, Mark texted me privately apologizing for his role in the situation. I felt uncomfortable with the plan from the start, he wrote, but Daisy and your parents were so convinced it would work. I'm sorry I didn't speak up sooner. I didn't respond, not ready to engage with any of them yet. Sleep became elusive. My own home no longer felt like the safe haven it once was. Every creak and sound outside had me jumping, afraid my parents or Daisy might return to continue their campaign. After the second night of barely sleeping, I called a security company and had cameras and a new alarm system installed. My friends Lena and Olivia took turns staying with me for the first week, providing both protection and emotional support. Aunt Beatrice called daily, checking in and offering updates on family dynamics without pressuring me to reconcile. 2 weeks after the incident, at Lena's urging, I made an appointment with a therapist who specialized in family trauma. Sitting in Dr. Evans's office, recounting the events of that day and the lifetime of similar, but less extreme incidents that preceded it, I began to recognize the patterns of manipulation and favoritism that had shaped my family relationships. What you're describing, Dr. Evans said gently, sounds like a lifetime of being treated as less deserving, less important than your sister. That takes a toll on a person's sense of worth. I nodded, tears streaming down my face. The worst part is, even knowing how wrong they were, part of me still feels guilty for calling the police, for not just giving them what they wanted to keep the peace. That's what they programmed you to do, she replied. But you're beginning to recognize that programming now. That's the first step toward changing it. 2 weeks after the police intervention, Lena accompanied me to a consultation with an attorney specializing in family law. I brought a detailed timeline of events, screenshots of threatening messages I'd received, and contact information for witnesses. Based on what you've described, Attorney Davis said, after reviewing my documentation, you have strong grounds for a temporary restraining order against your parents and sister. Their behavior crossed well beyond normal family disagreement into coercion and false imprisonment. The legal terminology made the situation even more surreal. False imprisonment by my own family in my own home. I never thought I'd be sitting in a lawyer's office discussing restraining orders against my parents, I admitted, feeling a fresh wave of grief. Family disputes can be the most difficult, she acknowledged sympathetically. But what they did was not just morally wrong, it was illegal. You have every right to protect yourself. I left her office with paperwork to file for temporary restraining orders and instructions to document any further contact attempts. The process of legally severing ties with my own family was heartbreaking, yet also strangely liberating. For the first time, I was setting clear boundaries and prioritizing my own well-being over their demands. The court granted the temporary restraining orders, prohibiting my parents and Daisy from coming within 500 feet of me or my home. When they were served with the papers, the messages from other family members intensified, many expressing shock that I would go this far over just a family disagreement. Their perspective was so warped by years of my parents' influence that they couldn't see the severity of what had happened. Through it all, I found unexpected support. Aunt Beatrice became a regular visitor, bringing homemade meals and sitting with me for hours, filling in gaps about family history that helped explain some of my parents' behavior. Your father's parents always favored his brother, she told me over tea one afternoon. No matter what Harold achieved, it was never enough. I think he's recreated that dynamic with you and Daisy without even realizing it. During my third therapy session, Dr. Evans suggested a support group for adult children of toxic parents. It can be incredibly validating to hear others' experiences and know you're not alone, she explained. Reluctantly, I attended my first meeting, sitting quietly in the back and just listening. To my surprise, many of the stories resonated deeply with my own experiences. During my second meeting, I shared a condensed version of what had happened, bracing for disbelief or judgment. Instead, I received understanding nods and supportive comments. One woman, Sarah, approached me afterward. My parents tried to pressure me into selling my condo and giving them the money because my brother needed it for his business, she shared. Not quite the same as your situation, but similar dynamics. It gets easier setting boundaries with them. And the guilt fades eventually, I promise. Her words gave me hope when I needed it most. 3 months after the incident, I began to feel safe in my home again. The new security system helped, but more important was the inner strength I was developing. I started a redecoration project, changing the paint colors in rooms where the worst confrontations had occurred, replacing furniture that held negative memories, and creating new positive associations with my space. I hosted a small dinner party for the people who had supported me through the crisis: Lena, Olivia, and Aunt Beatrice, and a few work friends who had shown extraordinary understanding when I needed time off. The evening was filled with genuine laughter and warmth, helping to replace the memory of that disastrous family gathering. Cousin Nancy reached out via email apologizing for not standing up more forcefully during the incident. I was shocked by what was happening, she wrote, but too cowardly to really intervene. I'm sorry, Clara. What they did was wrong, and I should have said something. Her honesty was refreshing, and we tentatively began rebuilding our relationship through occasional lunches. 6 months after the restraining order was granted, I received unexpected news at work. I was being promoted to senior financial analyst with a significant salary increase. My boss specifically cited my grace under pressure and improved confidence in client presentations as factors in the decision. The irony wasn't lost on me. Standing up to my family's outrageous demands had somehow strengthened my professional presence as well. During this period, my younger brother, Leo, who had been traveling abroad during the incident, returned and was immediately pulled into the family drama. He initially sided with our parents, calling me to express disappointment in my overreaction. I calmly explained exactly what had happened, including the police involvement and restraining order. There was a long silence before he said, "That doesn't sound like the version I heard." 3 weeks later, he called again. "I talked to Aunt Beatrice," he said, sounding subdued. "And Mark. I'm sorry, Clara. I didn't understand what really happened." His apology was the beginning of a cautious reconciliation between us, though I maintained firm boundaries about what I would discuss regarding our parents. In therapy, I continued to unpack the lifelong patterns of favoritism and manipulation that had shaped my relationship with my family. The expectation was always that I would give whatever was asked, without complaint, I told Dr. Evans during one session. My needs and feelings were secondary to Daisy's, always. That's a common dynamic in families with narcissistic parents, she explained. One child becomes the golden child who can do no wrong, while another becomes the scapegoat who can never quite measure up. Breaking free from those roles is incredibly difficult, but you're doing it. 1 year after the incident, my parents reached out through their attorney proposing a reconciliation. The letter was carefully worded to avoid any direct admission of wrongdoing, while suggesting they were ready to move forward and restore family harmony. I discussed it with Dr. Evans before responding. "What would a healthy reconciliation look like to you?" she asked. "If it were possible?" I thought carefully before answering. Acknowledgement of what actually happened, a genuine apology, and most importantly, respect for my boundaries going forward. I drafted a response with my attorney's help, outlining specific conditions for any potential reconciliation, a written acknowledgement of their actions, attendance at family therapy, and agreement to respect my boundaries, including my ownership of my home. They never replied to these conditions. Around this time, I heard through Aunt Beatrice that Daisy and Mark had separated. Their marriage was strained by financial pressures and the aftermath of the incident at my house. Mark had apparently begun questioning many of the family dynamics he had previously accepted, leading to conflict with Daisy and my parents. I felt sympathy for their children, caught in the middle of adult chaos, but maintained my distance, still protected by the restraining order. As the one-year anniversary of the incident approached, I decided to host a different kind of gathering, a chosen family celebration with the friends and relatives who had supported me through the darkest period of my life. We grilled in the backyard, played board games in the living room, and ended the evening around a fire pit, sharing stories and laughter under the stars. Looking around at these people who loved me without conditions or expectations, I felt a profound sense of peace. The journey had been painful but necessary. I had lost my biological family as I had known it, but gained a deeper understanding of myself and what healthy relationships should look like. The house that had become a battleground was once again my sanctuary, filled with new memories to overshadow the painful ones. Homes aren't just physical spaces, Aunt Beatrice said quietly as we watched the flames dance in the fire pit. They're what we create within ourselves, a sense of belonging and safety that we carry wherever we go. I nodded, understanding the deeper truth in her words. Through this ordeal, I had built something more valuable than a house, an unshakable sense of self-worth that no one could take away. The house was important, a symbol of my hard work and independence, but the real home I had created was the peace within myself, the knowledge that I deserved respect and had the strength to demand it. This journey taught me that sometimes the hardest boundaries to set are with the people who should love us most unconditionally. You deserve to feel safe and respected, especially in your own home.